Admiral John Carter sat in the conference room and tried not to show his frustration. He had been sitting in rooms like this for 3 years now, listening to alien diplomats talk in circles while accomplishing nothing. The Galactic Council chamber was massive, built to accommodate 47 different species, and right now every single one of them was ignoring him. Carter was 52 years old and had spent 30 years in Earth's military. He had fought in the resource wars, commanded destroyers in the outer colonies, and earned every medal the unified Earth forces could give. Now he was stuck playing diplomat on a station where humans were treated like annoying children. Next to him sat Commander Lisa Hayes, his second-in-command on the diplomatic vessel Vengeance. She was younger, only 35, but she had already developed the same tired expression Carter wore. They had both learned that the Galactic Council moved slowly, spoke carefully, and rarely did anything useful. The current debate had been going on for 2 hours. Ambassador Jake Morrison, Earth's official representative, stood at the human podium trying to make his case. He was a tall man with gray hair and the patience of a saint, which he needed for this job. Morrison held up a data tablet and projected images onto the main screen. The images showed mining ships, dozens of them, tearing apart asteroids in the outer rim. That would have been fine, except for one problem. Those asteroids were in human territory, or at least in space, that humans had claimed 50 years ago when they first joined the Council. The Zelthian Consortium has established 43 illegal mining operations in Sector 7, Morrison said, his voice calm and professional. We have asked them to cease operations 12 times over the past 6 months. They have ignored every request. The Zelthian ambassador, a creature that looked like a cross between a lizard and a bear, made a dismissive gesture with one clawed hand. His name was something humans could not pronounce, so they called him Zorth. He spoke through a translator device that made his voice sound metallic and cold. The humans make territorial claims they cannot enforce, Zorth said. Their presence in Sector 7 consists of one small outpost with minimal population. The consortium is simply making use of resources that would otherwise go to waste. Carter felt his jaw tighten. That small outpost was home to 5,000 people, mostly mining families who had lived there for 2 generations. They were not soldiers. They were not a threat. They were just people trying to make a living on the frontier. Morrison tried again. Under Council law, territorial claims are recognized based on settlement and registration. Earth filed the proper documents in 2187. The consortium is in violation of established protocol. Speaker Vorn, who led the council sessions, clicked his mandibles together in what might have been amusement. He was a Krillian, an insect-like species that stood nearly 8 feet tall. His kind had been part of the council for 6,000 years and thought of humans as newcomers who did not understand how things really worked. Ambassador Morrison, your claim is under review, Vorn said. His translator made him sound bored. The review process typically takes between 80 and 120 years. Until then, the territory remains in dispute. The consortium has as much right to operate there as Earth does. Hayes leaned close to Carter and whispered, 120 years, they know that's longer than a human lifetime, right? Carter nodded slightly. That was exactly the point. The council species lived much longer than humans. Some lived for centuries. They thought in terms of decades and centuries, not years and months. To them, a 100-year wait was nothing. To humans, it was a death sentence for any claim they tried to make. Morrison's face remained calm, but Carter knew him well enough to see the anger underneath. Speaker Vorn, with respect, the colonists in Sector 7 are reporting that Zelthian ships have begun aggressive maneuvers near their station. There have been close passes, targeting locks, and threatening communications. This goes beyond a territorial dispute. Zorth stood up, his bulk making the platform creak. The humans are paranoid. Our ships follow standard safety protocols. If their colonists feel threatened, perhaps they should relocate to safer space. Several council members made sounds that Carter had learned meant agreement or approval. The Vraxian ambassador nodded. The Corthan delegation clicked their approval. Even some of the smaller species seemed to side with the Zelthians. Carter understood why. The Zelthian consortium was wealthy and powerful. They had trade agreements with half the council species. They provided rare minerals and exotic materials that were hard to find elsewhere. Humans, on the other hand, provided nothing the council needed. Earth's technology was primitive by galactic standards. Human ships were slow. Human weapons were outdated. Humans were useful as labor and maybe as cultural curiosities, but not as equals. Morrison made one more attempt. We are formally requesting council intervention to enforce territorial law and protect Earth citizens from Zelthian aggression. Vorn's mandibles clicked again, faster this time. Your request is noted and will be considered. This session is adjourned. Just like that, it was over. The council members began standing, talking among themselves and filing out of the chamber. No vote, no decision, no help, just another promise to consider the issue later. Carter stood and buttoned his uniform jacket. Hayes gathered their data tablets. Morrison stepped down from the podium, his face tight with controlled anger. Same as always, Morrison said quietly. They smile, they nod, they do nothing. The colonists? Carter asked. I will send them another update. Tell them to be careful. Tell them to document every Zelthian contact. Tell them that help is coming. Morrison paused. Even though we all know it is not. They walked out of the council chamber together, moving through corridors filled with aliens of every shape and size. Some were small enough to fit in a human hand. Others were so large they had to use special doorways. None of them paid any attention to the three humans. Carter had joined Earth's diplomatic mission, believing that humanity could find its place in the galaxy through peaceful cooperation. He had thought the Council would be like the United Nations back on Earth, imperfect but ultimately trying to do the right thing. He had been wrong. The Council was not about justice or fairness. It was about power and profit. Species that had power got what they wanted. Species that did not have power got nothing. Back on the Vengeance, Carter sat in his command chair and stared at the view screen. It showed Nexus Prime, the massive space station that served as the Council's headquarters. Millions of beings lived there, representing thousands of worlds. It should have been a symbol of unity and civilization. Instead, it was just another place where the strong did what they wanted and the weak suffered. Hayes sat at her station, running through reports. Captain, message from New Dakota. That is the colony in Sector 7. They are reporting increased Zelthian activity. 3 ships entered orbit yesterday. The colonists are asking for instructions. Carter closed his eyes for a moment. New Dakota. 20,000 people living on a barely habitable planet because Earth was overcrowded and opportunities were scarce out on the frontier. They had farms, schools, hospitals. They had children. And now they had Zelthian warships in orbit. Tell them to remain calm and document everything, Carter said. Tell them that Earth is working through diplomatic channels. It was a lie, and they both knew it. Earth was not working through diplomatic channels. Earth was being ignored. But what else could he say? That they were on their own? That the Council did not care? That humanity had no real friends out here? Morrison entered the bridge, and Carter saw something in his eyes that had not been there before. It was not anger or frustration. It was something colder, something that looked like decision. Admiral, I need to send a classified message to Earth, Morrison said. Priority 1, eyes only for the President and the Joint Chiefs. Carter nodded. Use my comm station. What are you telling them? Morrison looked at the view screen, at the massive station filled with species that thought humans were weak and irrelevant. I am telling them that diplomacy has failed. I am telling them that we need to be ready for what comes next. Carter understood. Every species in the galaxy thought humans were soft because they tried to talk first and fight only as a last resort. They thought human patience was weakness. They were about to learn the difference between patience and cowardice. They were about to learn that humans remembered the old saying from Earth's violent history. Walk softly and carry a big stick. Humanity had been walking softly for 50 years. Now it was time to show the galaxy what stick they had been carrying all along. The emergency signal came through at 6 in the morning, station time. Carter was in his quarters trying to sleep when the alarm jerked him awake. He grabbed his uniform and was running toward the bridge before his brain fully processed what was happening. Hayes was already there, her face pale as she listened to the incoming transmission. The audio was broken, filled with static and the sound of explosions in the background. But the words were clear enough. "This is Colony Administrator Kate Sullivan on New Dakota. We are under attack. Repeat, we are under attack. Zelthian ships are firing on civilian targets. We need immediate assistance. Medical facilities have been hit. Evacuation centers are burning. Please, if anyone can hear this, we need help now." Carter felt his blood turn to ice. He grabbed the comm station. "This is Admiral Carter on the Vengeance. Kate, we are receiving your transmission. What is your status?" The response took a few seconds, long enough for Carter to imagine the worst. When Kate's voice came back, she sounded like she was crying. "Admiral, they hit the schools first. The schools. Why would they hit the schools?" Hayes made a small sound, almost like a gasp. Carter forced himself to stay calm and professional. "Kate, how many Zelthian ships are in your system?" 6 capital ships, maybe a dozen smaller ones. They dropped out of jump space an hour ago and just started shooting. No warning, no communication. They just opened fire." Another explosion in the background, loud enough to make the speakers crackle. "God, the hospital just took a direct hit. Admiral, we have wounded everywhere and nowhere to take them." Carter was already pulling up the tactical display. New Dakota was 4 hours away at maximum speed. The nearest Council security force was at Outpost Kepler, about 3 hours from New Dakota. He opened a priority channel to Council security. "This is Admiral John Carter, Earth Diplomatic Corps. We have an active emergency at New Dakota Colony in Sector 7. Civilian population under direct attack by Zelthian forces. Requesting immediate response." The reply came from a bored-sounding Vraxian officer. "Admiral Carter, please file a formal incident report through proper channels. Response teams will be dispatched according to standard protocol." "How long?" Carter demanded. "Standard response time for Sector 7 incidents is 6 to 8 hours, depending on available units." 6 to 8 hours. Kate Sullivan and 20,000 colonists did not have 6 to 8 hours. They might not have 6 to 8 minutes. Carter made a decision that would probably end his diplomatic career. "Hayes, signal the Defiance. Tell Captain Price to break orbit and head for New Dakota at maximum speed. Authorization Carter 7 Alpha." Hayes hesitated for just a second. The Defiance was a light frigate, one of only 3 human military vessels assigned to the diplomatic mission. Using it without Council approval was a serious violation of protocol. But she saw the look on Carter's face and started sending the signal. The transmission from New Dakota continued, but it was getting worse. Kate was no longer trying to sound calm. Her voice was raw with panic and grief. "They are targeting the evacuation shuttles. They are shooting down shuttles full of children. What kind of monsters do that?" Carter wanted to answer her, wanted to tell her that help was coming, but he could not make promises he might not keep. Instead, he just listened as Kate described the nightmare happening on her world. "We tried to surrender," she said. "Governor Harris transmitted surrender terms 20 minutes ago. They did not even respond. They just keep firing. The South Settlement is gone. Just gone. 10,000 people lived there, and now it is just burning wreckage." Hayes was crying now, tears running down her face as she worked her console. Other crew members on the bridge looked stunned. One young ensign had his hand over his mouth like he was going to be sick. Captain Danny Price confirmed receipt of Carter's orders within 5 minutes. "Sir, the Defiance is breaking orbit now. We will be at New Dakota in 3 hours. Be advised, we are 1 light frigate against 6 Zelthian capital ships. Our odds are not good." "I know, Danny," Carter said quietly. "Do what you can. Document everything." The next 3 hours were the longest of Carter's life. He sent messages to Earth, to the Council, to anyone who might listen. Most went unanswered. The Council sent back a formal acknowledgement that his incident report had been received and was being processed. That was all. Kate Sullivan's transmissions became less frequent. Sometimes they could hear fighting in the background, the sound of small arms fire. The colonists were trying to defend themselves with whatever weapons they had, which was not much. New Dakota was a farming colony. They had hunting rifles and mining equipment, not military hardware. At hour 2, Kate's voice came through one more time. "Admiral Carter, if you are still listening, I want you to know that we did everything right. We followed Council law. We filed the proper claims. We tried to be good galactic citizens, and they killed us anyway. Tell Earth what happened here. Tell them that the Council will not protect them. Tell them to stop trusting aliens who smile and do nothing." Then there was a massive explosion, loud enough to blow out the audio pickup. After that, nothing but static. Hayes tried to re-establish contact. She tried for 20 minutes while Carter stood behind her, his hands gripped so tight on her chair that his knuckles turned white. Finally, she looked up at him and shook her head. "Sir, I cannot raise anyone on New Dakota. All channels are dead." When the Defiance arrived at New Dakota 3 hours and 12 minutes after the attack began, Captain Price sent back video immediately. Carter watched it on the main view screen, and he felt something break inside him. New Dakota's main settlement was still burning. The hospitals, schools, and residential areas had been hit with orbital bombardment weapons, the kind that were supposed to be banned under Council law. Evacuation shuttles floated in orbit, torn apart by weapons fire. Bodies drifted in space, frozen and still. Most of them were small. Price's voice was flat and professional, but Carter could hear the rage underneath. "Admiral, I am counting 17,000 confirmed casualties, possibly more. The Zelthian ships departed the system approximately 1 hour before we arrived. They left no survivors in the southern settlement. The northern settlement has maybe 3,000 survivors, most of them wounded." Carter ordered Price to begin rescue operations, and then he did something he had never done in 30 years of military service. He sat down in his command chair and put his head in his hands. Around him, his crew was silent. Some were crying. Others just stared at the screens showing the burning colony. Hayes spoke quietly. "Sir, what do we do now?" Carter raised his head. His eyes were dry, but they had changed. Hayes would later tell people that she saw something die in her admiral that day, something human and gentle, and something else was born to replace it, something cold and absolutely merciless. "Now we go to the Council," Carter said. "We show them what their friends the Zelthians did. We ask them for justice one more time, and when they refuse, when they give us more empty promises and political delays, then we do what humans have always done when diplomacy fails." "What is that, sir?" "We remind the galaxy why every predator species eventually learns to fear humans. We show them what we become when you kill our children." Carter stood and straightened his uniform. He sent a coded message to Earth, 3 words that would set in motion events the galaxy was not prepared for. The message was simple and final. "Protocol Reaper, activate." On Earth, in a bunker deep beneath the Unified Command headquarters, an old general received the message and felt his heart sink. Protocol Reaper was the nightmare scenario, the plan humanity had made when they first joined the Council. It was based on one simple principle that every human understood from their violent history. If you want peace, prepare for war. If you want to survive among predators, you must become the biggest predator in the room. Humanity had spent 50 years building weapons in secret, developing technology the Council did not know existed, and preparing for the day when their patience would be mistaken for weakness. That day had come. The Zelthians had killed 17,000 humans, and the Council would do nothing about it. So humanity would do something about it instead. They would do something so terrible, so complete, and so precisely executed that every species in the galaxy would learn a new rule. You can attack humanity once, but there will never be a second time. Because after the first time, you will not exist anymore. Back on the Vengeance, Carter prepared to address the Council one final time. He had images of dead children and burning hospitals. He had testimony from survivors describing ships being shot down during evacuation. He had evidence of banned weapons being used on civilian targets. He had everything he needed to make his case. And he already knew it would not matter. The Council would express concern and promise investigations. The Zelthians would claim the humans fired first. The Krillian Empire would protect their client state, and humanity would receive nothing but sympathy and empty words. But Carter was going to give them one last chance, one final opportunity to do the right thing, because when the history books were written, he wanted it recorded that humanity had tried every peaceful option before unleashing hell. He wanted it clear that what came next was not human aggression or human imperialism. It was justice, pure, merciless, and absolutely deserved. The council session lasted 45 minutes. Carter showed them everything: images of burning schools, video of evacuation shuttles being shot down, testimony from survivors describing how the Zelthians had ignored surrender signals and kept firing. He presented evidence that banned orbital weapons had been used on civilian targets. Speaker Vorn watched it all with his compound eyes reflecting no emotion that humans could read. The other council members shifted in their seats, made uncomfortable sounds, but mostly looked away from the screens. When Carter finished, the chamber was quiet for maybe 30 seconds. Then Ambassador Zorth stood up. The Zelthian was massive and confident as he addressed the council. The humans present a tragic situation, but they show only half the story. New Dakota was being used as a military staging ground. Our security forces detected weapon signatures and responded to a legitimate threat. When we attempted to disable military targets, the colonists began firing on our ships. We defended ourselves. It was a complete lie. Carter opened his mouth to say so, but Morrison put a hand on his arm and shook his head slightly. "Let them finish," his expression said. "Let them hang themselves with their own words." Vorn's mandibles clicked thoughtfully. "This is clearly a serious matter that requires thorough investigation. I propose we form a committee to examine the evidence from both sides. The investigation should be comprehensive and fair, which means it will take time. Shall we say 6 months for preliminary findings?" 6 months. By then, everyone would have moved on to other issues. The investigation would drag on for years and eventually produce a report that blamed both sides equally. Carter had seen it happen before, with disputes between other species. He stood slowly and looked around the council chamber. Every species was represented here. Some were honest and decent, others were corrupt and self-serving. But all of them were watching to see what the human would do now that he had been denied justice. "Thank you, Speaker Vorn," Carter said calmly. "Earth appreciates the Council's attention to this matter. We will await the results of your investigation." Then he turned and walked out. Morrison and Hayes followed. Behind them, they could hear the council members already moving on to the next item on the agenda. 17,000 dead humans were now just paperwork to be processed. Outside the chamber, Morrison stopped Carter. "That is it? We are just leaving?" "Yes," Carter said. "We gave them their chance. Now we go home and let other people handle this." Morrison studied his admiral's face and understood. The time for diplomacy was over. Now it was time for the part of human history that every species eventually learned about, usually too late. Humanity had two modes: In peace, they were patient, creative, and eager to cooperate. In war, they were something the galaxy had not seen in a very long time. They were efficient. Carter returned to the Vengeance and sent a coded burst transmission to Earth. The message was brief. Council refused to act, proceeding with approved protocols. Estimate we will need 72 hours. The response came back within an hour, directly from the President. Authorization confirmed. Rules of engagement approved. No civilian targets. Document everything. The galaxy needs to understand this is justice, not murder. Good hunting, Admiral. What the Galactic Council did not know was that humanity had been preparing for this moment since the day they joined. Every species that came to the Council eventually asked the same question. What happens if someone attacks us and the Council does nothing? Most species accepted the answer that the Council would always act eventually. Humans did not accept that answer. Humans prepared. Deep in human space, far from Council sensors and prying eyes, Fleet Admiral Richard Cole stood on the bridge of the dreadnought Extinction and read his orders. Around him, 70 ships were powering up their reactors and preparing for combat operations. These were not the old fusion drive vessels the Council knew about. These were quantum displacement ships, capable of jumping across light years in seconds. The Council thought humanity had 12 capital ships. They were wrong. Humanity had built 140 warships in secret over the past 30 years, hidden in asteroid bases and moon facilities that looked like mining operations. Every ship used technology humanity had developed independently. The Council had made the mistake of thinking that because human technology was behind in some areas, it was behind in all areas. They had not considered that humans might specialize. Cole was 60 years old and had spent his entire adult life preparing for war with species more advanced than humanity. His ships did not use energy shields like Council vessels. Shields required massive power generators and could be overloaded. Instead, human ships used heavy armor and redundant systems. They were built to take damage and keep fighting. His weapons did not use plasma or particle beams. Those were effective but required constant power and could be detected from long range. Human weapons used kinetic kill vehicles, essentially smart bullets the size of telephone poles accelerated to near light speed. They were cheap to make, impossible to jam, and absolutely devastating on impact. Commander Beth Turner supervised the weapons loading on the Extinction. She was Cole's tactical officer and had spent 10 years planning this operation. Every target had been mapped, every Zelthian military installation, every warship, every orbital platform. Not a single civilian target was on the list. This was not revenge. This was surgery. Admiral, all ships report ready, Turner said. We have target packages loaded for 147 military objectives. Intelligence confirms all targets are legitimate military assets. Cole nodded. The rules were clear. No civilians, no cities, no infrastructure that could not be rebuilt. They were going to destroy the Zelthian military and economic power, not the Zelthian people. The galaxy needed to understand that humans could be ruthless without being monsters. Begin operations in 6 hours, Cole ordered. All ships are to use quantum displacement exclusively. I want us in and out before they even understand what is happening. No heroics, no unnecessary risks. We hit hard, we hit fast, and we come home. On the far side of human territory, Captain Alex Rodriguez commanded the Retribution, humanity's first true dreadnought. His ship alone massed more than 6 Council battleships combined. It was not fast or graceful. It was a hammer wrapped in armor plating, designed for one purpose: breaking things. Rodriguez read his orders and felt the weight of what was coming. He had 300 crew members under his command. Most of them had never seen real combat. They had trained for years, run endless simulations, but this would be different. This would be real ships exploding and real people dying. He called his senior staff to the briefing room. Lieutenant Nina Foster was there, the intelligence officer who had put together the target list. She looked young, but her eyes were hard. She had seen the images from New Dakota. So had everyone else. "We have 47 targets in our sector," Rodriguez told his officers. "Zelthian border patrol bases, fleet staging areas, and supply depots. Not one civilian target, not one city, not one population center." "I want to be absolutely clear about this. We are not here to kill Zelthians. We are here to destroy their ability to attack humans again." His executive officer, a hard-faced woman named Commander Janet Ortiz, raised her hand. "Sir, what if they try to surrender?" Rodriguez had thought about this question for 3 years, ever since he had been read into Protocol Reaper. "We do not accept surrender until all objectives are completed. The Zelthians did not accept surrender from New Dakota. We will extend them the same courtesy they showed our people. After our objectives are met, survivors will be allowed to leave the combat zone unharmed." It was cold. It was harsh. But it was also fair by the standards the Zelthians themselves had established. They had written the rules when they opened fire on children. Now they would live by those rules. Back on Nexus Prime, Morrison began quietly withdrawing human personnel from council stations. He told station administrators it was for routine rotation and training. In reality, he was clearing the way. In 72 hours, every human ship except the Vengeance would be gone from council space. The Vengeance would stay because Carter needed to be there to deliver the message when it was over. Hayes organized the withdrawal with military precision. Supply ships that had been docked at various stations suddenly had urgent cargo to deliver back to Earth. Diplomatic staff discovered family emergencies requiring their immediate return. Technical advisors finished their contracts early. Within 48 hours, human presence in council space had dropped by 90%. Only one council intelligence officer noticed the pattern. A Vraxian analyst named Krell sent a report to his superiors warning that the human withdrawal might indicate something serious was about to happen. His report was filed and ignored. The humans were emotional creatures still grieving over New Dakota. Of course they were going home. It meant nothing. Lieutenant Foster worked from a secure facility on Mars, coordinating with intelligence assets throughout Zelthian space. She had operatives who had been in place for years, some of them posing as traders or miners. They sent constant updates on ship positions, fleet movements, and base status. The Zelthians were not expecting trouble. Their fleet was dispersed across their territory in normal peacetime deployment. Their military bases were running standard security protocols. They had heard about New Dakota, of course. Some of them were celebrating. They thought they had taught the weak humans a lesson about respecting Zelthian power. In 72 hours, they would learn what happened when you taught humans the wrong lesson. On Earth, President William Chen addressed a closed session of the Unified Congress. The chamber was sealed and swept for surveillance. What he said would not be recorded or transmitted. This was too important for records. "In 6 hours, we will strike the Zelthian consortium with overwhelming force," Chen said quietly. "This is not a war of conquest. This is not imperialism. This is justice for 17,000 murdered civilians. The operation will last 72 hours. When it is over, the Zelthian military will effectively cease to exist." A senator from the North American Union stood. "Mr. President, what about the Council? What will they do?" Chen smiled, but there was no humor in it. "By the time the Council understands what is happening, it will be over. We will present them with accomplished facts and dare them to do something about it. If they want to fight us over this, we will be happy to educate them as well." The vote was unanimous. Every delegate supported the operation. Some because they believed it was right. Others because they were afraid of what humanity might become if they tried to stop it. Either way, the result was the same. Humanity was going to war. Carter sat in his quarters on the Vengeance and wrote a letter he hoped he would never have to send. It was addressed to the families of his crew, in case something went wrong and they did not come home. He told them that their loved ones had died trying to protect innocent people from those who thought human life was cheap. He sealed the letter and filed it in the ship's computer. Then he went to the bridge and waited. In a few hours, the first strikes would begin. The Council would finally learn that humanity's patience had limits, and the Zelthians would learn that some lessons cost more than you can afford to pay. The attack began at exactly midnight, Council Standard Time. Admiral Cole had chosen the moment carefully. Most Zelthian command staff would be off duty, response times would be slower, confusion would be maximized. The Extinction and her battle group jumped into the Zelthian home system 3 light minutes from the primary fleet base. The Zelthians had 14 minutes of warning before human weapons reached them. They spent 13 of those minutes trying to figure out what was happening and 1 minute dying. Cole watched the tactical display with cold satisfaction. The Zelthian base had shields, point defense systems, and early warning sensors. All of it was designed to stop the kind of weapons Council species used. Energy beams, missiles, plasma torpedoes, slow, predictable, detectable. Human kinetic kill vehicles were none of those things. They were chunks of tungsten wrapped in smart guidance systems, accelerated to 0.9 light speed by magnetic rails. At that velocity, they hit with the force of small nuclear weapons. Physics did the killing, not explosives. Commander Turner released the first salvo. 40 projectiles launched in 2 seconds. They crossed 3 light minutes in less than 20 seconds. The Zelthian shields tried to stop them and failed. Shield technology was designed to dissipate energy, not absorb kinetic impacts from objects moving that fast. The first projectile punched through the shield like it was not there and hit the base's main reactor. The reactor did not explode, it simply ceased to exist, along with everything within 200 meters. The second projectile took out the command center. The third hit the barracks. By the time the 40th projectile arrived, the base had been reduced to expanding clouds of debris. Total time from weapons launch to complete destruction was 34 seconds. Not a single human had been endangered. Not a single human ship had taken damage. The Zelthians never fired a shot in response because they were all dead before they understood they were under attack. Cole felt nothing as he watched the tactical display update. This was not cruelty. This was efficiency. Next target, he ordered. Across Zelthian space, similar scenes played out at 47 different locations. Human battle groups appeared, fired, and disappeared before defenders could respond. Military bases, fleet yards, supply depots, all gone in minutes. Captain Rodriguez brought the retribution to the Zelthian Second Fleet staging area. Intelligence said there would be 8 capital ships and 20 support vessels. Intelligence was correct. They were all docked for maintenance, their shields down, their weapons unpowered. Rodriguez had thought about offering them a chance to surrender. Then he remembered Kate Sullivan begging for mercy while Zelthian ships shot down evacuation shuttles. His finger did not hesitate when he gave the order to fire. The retribution had 48 railguns, each capable of firing 3 rounds per minute. In the first minute of combat, Rodriguez's ship launched 144 kinetic rounds. The Zelthian fleet tried to raise shields and failed. They tried to return fire and failed. They tried to jump to safety and failed. Everything failed because everything was happening too fast. In 2 minutes, the Zelthian Second Fleet ceased to exist. 28 ships, over 15,000 Zelthian military personnel, gone. Rodriguez felt his stomach twist as he watched the life signs disappear from his sensors, but he did not look away. He had ordered this. He would witness it. "Sir, receiving multiple surrender signals from escape pods," his communications officer reported. "Noted," Rodriguez said. "Continue to next objective. Recovery ships will collect survivors after we complete our mission." It was hard, but it was necessary. If they stopped to collect prisoners now, they would lose momentum. The Zelthians needed to understand that this time, humans were not stopping until the job was done. Back at New Dakota, Commander Hayes led a strike group specifically tasked with destroying the ships that had participated in the massacre. Human intelligence had identified the Zelthian vessels through their energy signatures and comm traffic. 6 capital ships and 11 support craft. Hayes found them at a supply depot on the Zelthian frontier. They were being resupplied and rearmed, probably preparing for another attack on human colonies. She did not bother with targeting solutions or careful aim. She just ordered her entire group to open fire at maximum rate. The supply depot and everything in it vanished in a storm of kinetic fire. Hayes watched until the last debris stopped glowing. Then she ordered her ships to the next target. She felt nothing. Not satisfaction, not guilt, not anger. She was empty inside, hollowed out by the images of dead children that played in her head every time she closed her eyes. "Target destroyed," she reported to Admiral Cole. "Moving to secondary objectives." For 24 hours, the pattern continued. Human ships appeared, destroyed their targets, and vanished. The Zelthians tried to respond, but they were always too slow. They tried to concentrate their fleet, but humans were using quantum displacement to strike anywhere instantly. They tried to call for help from their allies, but help was hours or days away. By hour 24, the Zelthian military had been effectively destroyed. 60% of their fleet was gone. 70% of their military infrastructure was burning debris. Their economy was starting to collapse, as orbital manufacturing platforms and resource processors were systematically eliminated, and not a single civilian had died. Human targeting was so precise that attacks on orbital facilities happened when civilian workers were evacuated. Strikes on military bases occurred in ways that gave non-combatants time to reach shelters. It would have been easier to just destroy everything without discrimination, but that was not the point. The point was to show that humans could be merciless without being monsters. At hour 26, the Krillian Empire made a mistake. They sent a battle fleet to defend the Zelthian homeworld. It was a gesture of support for their client state and a warning to humanity not to push too far. Admiral Cole received the intelligence report and made a decision that would change galactic politics forever. He jumped his entire fleet to the Zelthian homeworld and positioned them in orbit, directly facing the Krillian force. 50 human warships hung in space above the Zelthian capital. Below them, 3 billion Zelthians watched and waited to see if they were about to die. In front of them, 40 Krillian warships prepared for battle. Cole opened a direct channel to the Krillian admiral. The translation took a second. Then Cole spoke in clear, simple words. "This is Fleet Admiral Richard Cole of the United Earth Forces. You have 30 seconds to withdraw from this system. If you are still here after 30 seconds, we will consider you hostile combatants and respond accordingly." The Krillian admiral was named Vorthon. He had commanded fleets for 200 years and fought in 17 wars. His species had never lost a major engagement. They were powerful, confident, and completely unprepared for what they saw on their sensors. Human ships did not look like council vessels. They were bulky, ugly, covered in armor plating instead of sleek hulls. But Vorthon's sensor officers were reporting power readings that made no sense. Each human dreadnought generated more power than 3 Krillian battleships combined. And there were 15 dreadnoughts in the formation. Vorthon looked at the tactical display and made a calculation that saved his fleet and possibly his entire species. He could fight and probably lose, or he could withdraw and preserve his forces for battles that mattered. The Zelthians were clients, not family. They were not worth dying for. "All ships, withdraw to jump distance and hold position," Vorthon ordered. His fleet began backing away slowly, weapons still powered, but no longer targeting human vessels. Cole watched them go and felt a moment of respect for an enemy who knew when to back down. Then he returned his attention to the planet below. Every Zelthian government official, military officer, and corporate executive was watching. Time to deliver the message. This is Admiral Cole to the Zelthian government. Your military no longer exists. Your fleet is destroyed. Your bases are gone. Your economy is in ruins. We did this in 26 hours. We could have done it in 6 hours if we had not been careful to avoid civilian casualties. Remember this. We showed restraint. We showed mercy. The next species that attacks human civilians will not receive the same courtesy. He cut the transmission and ordered his fleet to jump out. They had more targets to hit before the 72 hours were complete. Lieutenant Foster tracked the operation from her command center on Mars. Her board showed green lights as each target was confirmed, destroyed. 147 military objectives, all eliminated, 0 civilian casualties. She allowed herself a small smile. Human precision was terrifying to those who paid attention. By hour 48, the attacks slowed. Most primary targets were gone. Human ships began hitting secondary objectives, things like communication arrays and sensor networks. Nothing that could not be rebuilt, but enough to ensure the Zelthians would be deaf and blind for months. By hour 60, the Zelthians were broadcasting surrender offers on every frequency. They promised reparations, territorial concessions, anything humans wanted. Admiral Cole ignored them all. The operation would continue until the full 72 hours were complete. That was the plan, and changing plans mid-operation led to mistakes. At hour 72, Cole gave the order to cease fire and withdraw. His fleet jumped back to human space, leaving behind a Zelthian consortium that had been reduced from a major power to a broken remnant in 3 days. The final tally was brutal in its completeness. 87% of Zelthian military forces destroyed. 92% of military infrastructure eliminated. Economic capacity reduced by 60%. And most importantly, 0 human casualties and 0 Zelthian civilian casualties. Cole sat in his command chair on the extinction and wrote his after-action report. His hands were steady, his conscience clear. They had done what needed to be done. They had shown mercy where possible and ruthlessness where necessary. The galaxy would remember this for a very long time. On the Vengeance, Admiral Carter received the confirmation that all operations were complete. He nodded to Hayes and Morrison. It is time. Let us go tell the Council what humanity has done. Morrison looked at the data showing the scale of destruction. They will be terrified. Carter stood and straightened his uniform. Good. Fear is honest. Respect built on fear lasts longer than respect built on empty promises. The Council had their chance to protect us through law. Now they will protect us through self-interest. Let us go show them what happens when diplomacy fails. The emergency session of the Galactic Council began at 10 in the morning, exactly 1 week after the Zelthian consortium had been destroyed. Every representative was present. Every seat was filled. The gallery was packed with observers from species that wanted to witness history being made. Ambassador Morrison walked to the human podium with Admiral Carter beside him. Behind them, the main display screen showed a simple counter. 147 targets. 147 confirmations. 72 hours. 0 civilian casualties. The silence in the chamber was total. Morrison had attended council sessions for 3 years and had never heard it this quiet. Usually there was constant chatter, side conversations, the noise of hundreds of beings discussing business and politics. Now, there was nothing. Just silence and the sound of Morrison's footsteps echoing on the floor. Speaker Vorn sat in his elevated chair, his compound eyes fixed on the humans. His mandibles clicked once, nervously, then went still. Morrison had never seen the Krillian look uncertain before. It was interesting to watch. The Council recognizes Ambassador Morrison of Earth, Vorn said. His translator made his voice sound hollow, like he was speaking from far away. Morrison touched his data tablet, and the main screen changed. Now it showed side-by-side images. On the left, burning settlements from New Dakota, children's bodies in the rubble, hospitals destroyed. On the right, precision strikes against Zelthian military bases. Clean, efficient destruction of legitimate targets. The contrast was deliberate and brutal. 1 week ago, the Zelthian Consortium committed an act of genocide against the human colony of New Dakota, Morrison began. His voice was calm and professional. They murdered 17,000 civilians using banned weapons against undefended targets. When the colonists attempted to surrender, the Zelthians ignored them and continued firing. When evacuation shuttles tried to escape, the Zelthians shot them down. The screen showed video of a shuttle being destroyed, small bodies tumbling into space. Morrison heard gasps from around the chamber. Good. They needed to see what had been done. Earth brought this evidence to the Council and requested immediate intervention. We were told to wait for an investigation that would take months or years. We were promised that proper procedures would be followed. The Zelthians claimed we had fired first, a lie that some of you were willing to accept. Morrison paused and looked around the chamber. Some representatives met his eyes. Others looked away. He saw guilt on some faces, fear on others. Most just looked confused, still trying to understand what the humans had done. Earth decided that waiting was no longer acceptable. In a 72-hour period, United Earth forces eliminated 87% of Zelthian military capacity. We destroyed their fleet, their bases, and their ability to threaten human lives. We did this with precision and restraint. Not a single civilian died. Not a single city was touched. We demonstrated that humans understand the difference between justice and revenge. The screen changed again, showing detailed target lists. Every installation was clearly marked as a military objective. Every strike was time-stamped and documented. The record was complete and undeniable. Some of you may question our actions. Some may call this excessive or aggressive. To those voices, I offer this response. We followed your laws. We trusted your systems. Our people died because your laws and systems failed to protect them. We will not make that mistake again. Carter stepped forward. He had not planned to speak, but Morrison gestured for him to take the podium. The Admiral looked tired, like he had not slept in days. His uniform was perfect, but his eyes were hard. I am Admiral John Carter, he said quietly. I commanded the diplomatic mission that asked this council for help. I watched you debate and delay while human children burned. I heard promises of investigations that we all knew would lead nowhere. And I realized something that I should have understood years ago. He paused and looked directly at Speaker Vorn. The council does not exist to protect the weak. It exists to maintain the power of the strong. You will investigate crimes for decades if they are committed by species you fear. You will ignore crimes completely if they are committed by species you profit from. The Zelthians were valuable trading partners. Humans were inconvenient newcomers. So when the Zelthians killed us, you did nothing. Vorn started to speak, but Carter kept talking, his voice growing louder. We learned this lesson. We learned that in this galaxy, protection comes from strength, not law. So we became strong. We built weapons you did not know about. We developed technology you never saw. We prepared for the day when your systems would fail us. That day came. We responded. The screen changed one more time, showing President Chen's recorded message. The president sat in the Oval Office, his hands folded on his desk, his expression serious. Members of the Galactic Council, I am President William Chen of United Earth. I authorized Operation Reaper against the Zelthian Consortium. This was not a decision made lightly. We exhausted all diplomatic options. We followed all proper procedures. We gave you every opportunity to provide justice through lawful means. When you failed, we acted. Chen's image looked directly at the camera, directly at the council members watching. Let this serve as the only warning humanity will provide. We came to this galaxy seeking peace and cooperation. We still desire those things, but we will never again trust others to protect our people. We will never again wait for investigations while our children die. Our restraint is a choice we make, not a weakness you can exploit. Remember this when you consider how to treat humanity in the future. The recording ended. The screen went dark. Morrison and Carter stood at the podium and waited. The silence stretched for what felt like hours, but was probably only a minute or two. Finally, a representative stood. Ambassador Krell of the Vraxian Federation. He was old even for his long-lived species. He had been on the council for 70 years and had seen wars, treaties, and the rise and fall of civilizations. The Vraxian Federation wishes to speak, Krell said. His voice was steady and clear. What humanity has done is unprecedented in council history. They have demonstrated military capability that exceeds most member species. They have shown precision and restraint while executing total war, and they have made clear that they will not tolerate threats to their people. Krell looked around the chamber, making eye contact with other representatives. The council has a choice. We can treat this as an act of aggression and attempt to sanction Earth. Or we can acknowledge that we failed in our duty to protect a member species and that humanity's response, while extreme, was justified by our failures. He paused, then continued. I propose we take the second option. Furthermore, I propose immediate recognition of all human territorial claims. I propose granting Earth permanent seats on the Council Security Committee, and I propose granting humanity elder species status with all associated rights and privileges. The murmur that ran through the chamber was like static electricity. Elder species status was reserved for the most powerful and influential races. Humans had been members for only 50 years. They were supposed to wait centuries for such recognition. But Krell was proposing to grant it immediately. Speaker Vorn's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of agitation. Ambassador Krell, such proposals require extensive debate and multiple votes. We cannot simply grant elder species status because a member has demonstrated military power. Krell turned to face Vorn directly. Can we not? Then explain to me, Speaker, what criteria we should use instead. Humanity has proven they are powerful enough to destroy major civilizations. They have proven they are disciplined enough to do so without committing atrocities. They have proven they will not tolerate being treated as inferiors. What more qualification do they need? Vorn looked like he wanted to argue, but he saw the faces of the other council members. He saw fear. He saw calculation. He saw representatives doing the math and realizing that opposing humanity now might result in their own fleets being destroyed in 72 hours. Very well, Vorn said slowly. We will vote. All those in favor of recognizing human territorial claims in full? Every appendage in the chamber rose, not a single vote against. Morrison felt Carter tense beside him. They had expected resistance, debate, political maneuvering. Instead, they were getting complete capitulation. All those in favor of granting Earth permanent Security Committee seats. Again, unanimous approval. The voting continued. Every proposal Krell had made was approved without a single dissenting vote. In 10 minutes, humanity's status in the galaxy had been completely transformed. When the voting ended, Vorn looked at Morrison and Carter. Does Earth have anything further to present? Morrison glanced at Carter, who shook his head slightly. They had said what needed to be said. The council had responded. Now it was time to see if this new respect would last. Earth has nothing further at this time, Morrison said. We thank the council for their attention and their decisions. We hope this marks the beginning of a more productive relationship between humanity and the galactic community. They walked out of the chamber together. Behind them, the council members began talking, their voices rising in volume. Some sounded angry, others sounded relieved, a few sounded genuinely impressed, but none of them sounded dismissive anymore. None of them would ever again make the mistake of thinking humanity was weak. In the corridor outside, Hayes was waiting for them. "Sir, we are receiving priority messages from a dozen different species. They are all requesting meetings, trade agreements, non-aggression pacts. Everyone wants to be humanity's friend now." Carter smiled, but it did not reach his eyes. Fear makes for honest diplomacy. Schedule the meetings. Earth will need allies now that we have shown our teeth. Morrison looked back at the council chamber. "Do you think this will prevent future conflicts, Admiral?" Carter considered the question carefully. They stood at a viewport showing the vast expanse of space, millions of stars representing millions of worlds. Somewhere out there, other species were hearing about what humanity had done. Some would be inspired, others would be terrified. A few would start planning how to destroy humans before humans could threaten them. "No," Carter said finally. "This will not prevent conflicts, but it will change how those conflicts begin. The next time someone considers attacking us, they will remember the Zelthians. They will remember that humanity's patience has limits. They will remember that we show mercy until we do not." "Is that enough?" Hayes asked quietly. Carter thought about Kate Sullivan's last transmission. He thought about the children who died at New Dakota. He thought about the 17,000 civilians who had trusted that the galaxy's laws would protect them. He thought about all of it, and he felt something break inside him that would never heal. "It has to be enough," he said, "because the alternative is to become the kind of species that strikes first and asks questions never. We are not there yet. We still try to talk before we fight. We still show restraint when we can. But we have drawn a line in the darkness. Cross that line and we will remind you why humanity's ancestors climbed to the top of Earth's food chain." They walked to the docking bay where the Vengeance waited. Behind them, the Galactic Council continued its session, already moving on to other business. But the galaxy had changed. Humanity had changed it. They had arrived as students seeking wisdom from elder races. They had become teachers delivering a lesson in the oldest subject of all: power, real power. Not the kind that comes from technology or numbers, but the kind that comes from being willing to do what needs to be done when all other options have failed. The Vengeance undocked from Nexus Prime and began the journey home to Earth. On the bridge, Carter sat in his command chair and looked at the stars. Somewhere out there, Admiral Cole's fleet was returning from Zelthian space. Somewhere, Captain Rodriguez was writing reports on the battles he had fought. Somewhere, Lieutenant Foster was analyzing intelligence on how other species were reacting to humanity's demonstration. And somewhere, in the ruins of New Dakota, memorials were being built for 17,000 people who had died because the galaxy thought human life was cheap. Their names would be carved in stone. Their stories would be told to future generations. And humanity would remember them every time someone suggested that maybe they should trust the Council to protect them. Never again. That was the promise humanity had made to itself. Never again would they rely on others for protection. Never again would they wait for permission to defend their own. Never again would they mistake diplomatic courtesy for actual safety. The galaxy had wanted humanity to learn how to be civilized. Humanity had learned. They had learned that civilization was not about being weak or passive. It was about choosing restraint when you had the power to destroy. It was about showing mercy when you could show cruelty. It was about drawing clear lines and enforcing them without hesitation. The Galactic Council had been shocked into silence by humanity's retaliation. That silence would echo across the galaxy for generations. It would become a warning passed down through time, a reminder that some species are dangerous precisely because they do not want to be, because they choose peace until peace is no longer possible. Because they understand that sometimes the only way to prevent war is to win it so decisively that no one dares to start another. Humanity had learned this lesson from their own bloody history. Now they had taught it to the stars. The question was whether anyone was listening.